Welcome to the MedEvidence podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Koren and Michelle McCormick. MedEvidence, where we help you navigate the real truth behind medical research with both a clinical and research perspective. In this podcast, we'll have discussions with physicians that have extensive experience in patient care and research. How do you know that something works? In medicine, we conduct clinical trials to see if things work. Now, let's get the truth behind the data.
Hello, my name is Dr. Michael Koren, and I have the pleasure of being the moderator for our MedEvidence Hour. Usually I'm on the other side of the microphone, but today I have the great pleasure of having a tremendous guest who's actually going to do all the hard work while I just ask the questions. And next to me I have Adrian Rowda, who is a nurse practitioner. She works here in Jacksonville, Florida. She's trained at Jacksonville University, and she's somebody I've actually known for a long time because I know her dad. And what we're going to explore today is how we train the next generation on getting involved in clinical research. And what are the characteristics that make somebody good at research? What are the characteristics that make people interested in research? And how we can communicate the power of what we learn in research to the general public. And young, vibrant, smart people like you are part of that. And we need to develop this next generation. And I'd like for you to share with everybody sort of your journey to become involved in clinical research and what your thoughts are for the future and what you thought was cool about it and what you maybe turned you off so that we can do better next time. But just tell your story. And before I let you speak, I teased you there by maybe allowing you to speak. But before, I just want to mention that I met your dad probably about 20 years ago. He kind of reached out to me, as a matter of fact, and he was interested in research and heard some of the things that I was doing. And when I first met him, I can see characteristics that were fabulous for a research person and really intriguing characteristics that I'll get into more in a little bit. But from the first time I met him till now, I find him to be a delight. He has a level of intellectual curiosity that is so important in a good researcher. And he's not afraid to ask questions and then accept the answers for what they're worth. And if he doesn't like the answers, he'll ask other questions to see whether or not he needs to change his hypothesis or go to a different one. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk much more about that in a second. But first, tell us about you a little bit more. Tell us about what you first remember in terms of your exposure to research, and maybe share some stories as a little kid growing up with a neat dad.
So I grew up with a mother who's a nurse and a father who is an ophthalmologist, and I think that really helped shape who I am today and how I went through school and chose my path in medicine. As a child in middle school, I saw the show Trauma Life in the ER, and it got me very excited about the fast-paced medicine, blood and guts. It was exciting. Things were happening very quickly. My dad helped guide me into candy striping when that's what it was called back in the day at the hospital. I'd volunteer.
Why do they call it candy striping?
I don't know. That's the smock was red and white, and that's what I wore.
Did you give out candy to the patients?
I did not. So I do not think it's called that anymore. But back in the day, small town in Florida, I was involved in that in high school. And then I shadowed many mid-levels, which we call them advanced practice providers today, APPs. And it helped shape me going to nursing school and the nursing route. I liked the career path of being a mid-level, and that I could be a nurse and then get exposure to maybe what I'd want to specialize in. So after nursing school, I started right in an intensive care unit, and then after graduate school again, I went right into intensive care. Through the years, I've heard of Dr. Koren and my dad's involvement in research. He always had wonderful things to say. He liked the staff. The patients were pleasant. They were there voluntarily, and an opportunity arose for me to get my hands wet and doing some research. And so I've been there for about 3 months now, and I've really enjoyed it. I think that in grad school, they talk a lot about papers and research, but they don't talk about the hands-on approach that a provider can be involved in. So I've really enjoyed taking my time, meeting with each patient. You don't feel rushed. In the ICU, patients don't often talk to you. So I've enjoyed getting to build a relationship with these patients, and they're happy to talk to you. They're happy to be there. They want to be involved in research, and they want to help in any way that they can.
Wow, that's a very, very intense statement, and I appreciate that. And I have so many questions that generated. So just a little bit more background for me to understand. So was your mom a clinical nurse while you were growing up?
She was. Uh-huh. She worked in a PACU.
I see. Okay, so she was also doing some intense stuff when you were growing up. Did you ever go to work with her?
I didn't, but I did shadow my dad watching some cataract surgeries, and I ended up in an ortho room after watching Trauma Life in the ER. I wanted the excitement, and I think, eye surgery is not as blood and guts, and so even ortho wasn't at the time. So I really volunteered in the ER, and so when a physician would do a procedure, they'd let me watch, and
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the other interesting thing is you talk about blood and guts and want to do action and the adrenaline rush and all that, and that's typical of a surgical specialty.
It is.
And in research, it's more sort of intellectual and communication. And it's funny you say that because I had the same dichotomy when I was training. So I didn't grow up in a medical family at all. In fact, I don't think I met a doctor until I went to medical school. So it was just a little bit of a happenstance that I ended up in medical school. But when I got there, my favorite clerkship was actually surgery. And I got to do surgery at Mass General Hospital as a medical student, which was really, really cool. And I met some really, really neat people, and I loved it. And they liked me. I got an honors grade in it, which was pretty hard to get, and I was excited about that. And they were interested to know if I would be a surgeon. But there was also part of me that was so interested in just asking questions and analyzing. And I realized that if you're going to work so hard on developing your hands and your surgical skills, that there may be less time to ask and answer questions.
Right.
So I ultimately decided to do cardiology, which has some of that action elements, but also has some of those intellectual things. It was very, very rich in epidemiological questions and other things that can be asked and then answered through data collection. So it's interesting. It's a dichotomy. But both you and I show you can do both. Yeah. And it's funny how your paths can bring you to a place that accommodates different parts of your brain and different parts of what you like to do. But let's also focus on the communication. You're an excellent communicator. And so how'd you develop those skills? And is that important to you? And give some examples maybe in your day-to-day how you deploy those skills.
So currently I work in a Neuro Intensive Care Unit, and part of our jobs as APPs in the program is to go down to any strokes that any patient in the hospital we think is having a stroke. And so you have to get information that you need, and you need to get it quickly, and you need to get it accurately. So you have to delegate, and everything has to be done quickly, and you have to provide the right information to the right surgeon attending. And so I think that fast pace of telling who I need to get information to kind of correlates into what I do now, and kind of redirecting, because patients love to talk there. And in the study I'm helping with in research right now, most of the patients are retired. So they have all the time to share their stories and try and remember what disease process started when. So I think that kind of my critical care medicine and being able to tease out information that I need and kind of cut people off in a polite way to get what the information I need immediately can help translate to what I'm doing now.
Yeah. That's a really, really important skill. The skill of letting people feel they're communicating and saying something, but they tend to get off track very easily. Yeah. So you got to kind of bring them back on track without being rude, which not very many people can do very well.
It's an art skill in medicine. And it's another thing I like about research is that, I've not worked in family practice, but, you have a time limit. And I feel that I have a lot of time. I don't feel rushed with the patients that I work with in research. And so you do have to kind of pull them back in at times, but still I have the time to listen to a couple stories and let them speak.
No. So I love that point from a number of standpoints. First, it's what people are really looking for in healthcare now. Yeah. They want where they're in systems that are just asking them for bits and pieces of data, and they want to tell their stories. Yeah. And they don't get a chance to tell their stories, and it's incredibly frustrating, and they feel unheard when they're in the hospitals and other places because they can't tell their stories.
Right.
So the fact that we have the research venue to allow people to do that, I think is very, very powerful. And one of the reasons why people enjoy research, and my oft quoted statistic is that 99% of people that do research studies with us will do a second study because we listen to them.
Yeah, we have the time. It's very enjoyable.
We listen to them. And then the other thing, of course, is there's a regulatory reason for that because, as you know, when we do FDA supervised studies, we have to report all the side effects in the study, whether or not we think it's related to the medication that we're studying or the process that we're studying.
Right.
So literally, people say, yeah, I get this funny itch behind my ear when I eat bananas, and you'll like write it down, and they'll say, wow. Did I say something important? So, and again, who knows if that is actually relevant, but if one person in Northeast Florida were to say that that was a side effect of their Alzheimer's drug, well, maybe we make nothing of it. But if we have 100 people in different parts of the world that making the same crazy observation, well, it's probably something.
Right.
And that's the power of doing multi-center research, is that sometimes crazy random things actually cluster, which gives us an insight that we would get no other way. So it's a pretty cool part of what we do, and also a reminder of the international nature of what we do. So we're going to end this session with that thought. Okay. But I'm going to play off of that because I have my business in Northeast Florida, and your dad was from more Central West Florida in a very rural area, which I consider maybe even international outreach.
Yes.
Thanks for watching the MedEvidence podcast. To watch the rest of this series, head over to medevidence.info or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform.